And welcome back. As we go ahead and continue looking at classes, we've had these methods actually introduced to us already, but now we're going to take a little bit more in-depth look at them, which is the equals and toString methods. So Java libraries and methods that have to be included in our classes. Java expects certain methods to be in pretty much all classes. This is because the standard Java libraries have software that assumes that such methods are defined within your program. Two of these methods are, of course, the equals and the toString method. Therefore, you should include these methods in your class. Your program is not going to break if you don't have them. We've seen this already. But generally speaking, it's going to expect that these should be here. And we've actually, again, already seen the toString and the equals method, as well as some other methods in our date for try class. So we already, again, have some familiarity with using these methods. So let's go ahead and first look at the equals method. The method equals is a Boolean valued method to compare two objects of the class to see if they satisfy the notion of, quote, being equal. The heading, of course, is public Boolean equals, the class name, parameter name. Again, we saw this in our date for try class, which manifested as public Boolean equals date for try, other date. When we use the method equals to compare two objects of the class date for try, one object, of course, is our calling object, and the other is the argument. So in our main program, we saw this as date1 dot equals date2, or conversely, you could do date2 dot equals date1. Now, let's revisit this notion of equality here. Because the method equals returns a type Boolean, you can use the invocation of equals in an if else statement, and we've seen this. We did this actually in our last example, where we had it as the else if condition. There's no absolute notion of equality, though, that you have to follow in your definition of equals. You can technically define the method equals any way you wish, but if we truly want it to be useful, it should reflect some notion of equality that is useful to the software you are developing. A common way, of course, to define equals for simple classes like the ones that we've been designing is to say that equals is going to return true if each instance variable of one object equals the corresponding instance variables of the other object. And this is a pretty common approach. You could do it if you just want to compare, let's say there's three instance variables, you only want to compare two of those three, you could do that. But again, a lot of times when we want to see that two class objects of different class are going to be equal, we just are, of course, going to compare apples to apples here. So if you have a string called name in one object, you want to compare string and name of the other. Now, we can technically rewrite using the this parameter. So, for example, we want to clarify our method, know what is actually going where. We can use the this parameter. So, for example, I could have my public Boolean equals be using this dot month or this dot day or this dot year to go ahead and specify that against our other one, which of course is other date dot month, other date dot year, other date dot day. So what this ultimately says is, well, if date1 and date2 are objects of the date for try class, then date1 equals date2 is going to return true, provided those three instant variables in date1 have values equal to those in date2. You'll also note that the method in the definition of equals is used to compare months. It's not the equals for date for try, but it says equals for the string class. All right, and this is because if you think about it, we know that the calling object is of type string. And again, when you look here, we have a dot equals here, which of course this dot equals is a string because what type is this instance variable? Month is a string, so this dot equals is not referring to this equals here, but instead is referring to the equals within the string class. Now, why are we using the string class here? Well, as I've already mentioned, remember that we're using the equals of the string class because equals equals does not work correctly when you're comparing string values. Perfectly fine for integers, perfectly fine for doubles, floats, etc. However, the method toString, when we start looking at this one, it's going to need to be defined so that it returns a string value that then represents the data in an object. Now, one nice thing about toString is that it's very easy to output an object to the screen. So if date is of type, let's say date for try, then you can output the date using system.println date.toString. But what about that println statement? How does that get used with objects? Well, system.println was written so that it automatically invokes toString if you do not include it. An object date can be outputted using simply just system.println date. Very simple. This also means that our method write output, which we've included up to this point in our classes, is kind of superfluous there. It's extra. We can actually technically take that out because now we have a better method that allows us to do that. And another thing you'll notice is that we have this special rule with the concatenation operator. If we look at any kind of demo code that has a toString and it's called automatically, you'll notice that if we want to have any kind of text in there, we have to concatenate it with the plus operator. So for example, this is now a print line, date 1 plus quote equals quote plus date 2. And we've already seen this because of how we've worked with strings. So it's again nothing new to us, but this is kind of giving you some of that reasoning why. So in this case, if we look at the date class, the plus operator is what causes the automatic invocation of toString. Therefore, the following is legal. String s equals date 1 plus quote equals quote plus date 2, which of course is equivalent to us having the .toString invocation in there. All right, and if we go ahead and take a look at our demo here in Eclipse, we have our date4 try class again, and you'll notice we of course have our Boolean methods that we had before, but now of course this is our toString method here. So let's go ahead and add a comment here. So we'll say this is the toString method, so we can kind of remember that. And again, this was previously here, but I'm just going to add the comment because all it says is returns month plus quote plus day plus a comma year. Which, of course, if you look, is pretty much the exact same as write output. In fact, we could even delete write output out of here, because remember, it's going to be effectively the same thing. So when we look at our next version of the state class, we're probably not going to have that write output method anymore because we have a better method that's going to do it, which is the toString method, which, because it's something that Java expects, means that it's going to actually function a lot nicer. Because we're going to see that here when we look at our demo. So in here, we have, of course, have a equals call and a proceeds call, which, of course, we saw last time. And you'll notice we have our date plus equals date 2. And just for our purposes, I also have a .toString invocation down here. So when I run this, you'll see that we automatically spit out whatever value is actually assigned to date 1. If I didn't have a toString method, I'll show you that in a second what would happen. But here I have, of course, an explicit call to the toString method. And you can see we get exactly the same result. But if I were to take out the toString method for a second here, I'm just going to cut that out. Go back to here. We'll comment this guy out so we don't have to worry about that throwing an error. Go ahead and rerun it. You notice we get some sort of gibberish coming out here. It says date4 try, and we got some gibberish throwing in here, because what this is actually generating, and we'll talk about this later on, is a memory reference. And we don't want this. We want this to spit out those values that we had previously. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that toString back in here. If I rerun, again, you'll see we get the proper values.